if you're an artist, you're probably already familiar with the Jelly Roll pen. It's a basic go-to pen for adding highlights and shines to your art and illustration. If you're not an artist, hi, hello. But today we're going to be creating art with the gray jelly rolls, these cute pastel jelly rolls, these ridiculous neon jelly rolls, and these metallic jelly rolls. 4 different illustrations with 4 different vibes. Let's get into it. But first, you guessed it, I do want to swatch these, so I'm going to be swatching them on white, brown, and black paper, and basically seeing which one suits each set more. Don't ask me why, but I thought it'd be really fun to create little animal heads with the swatching, so that's what I did. So unfortunately, it looks like our metallic pens were kind of putting up a fight to work, so I'm not really sure what to do about those, but we'll see. What I thought was pastel isn't actually pastel, but they are very earthy colors. I do like that. Again, they work pretty well on all 3 colors. And then I really enjoyed our grayscale colors. I think, again, it looks really good on 3 colors of paper. There's just something very satisfying about grayscale. But all of that being said, I just feel like our brown paper is just going to be a little bit too mid-toned to work on any one illustration. There's just, none of the colors pop really all that well. So I just feel like this isn't working, sadly. Which brings us to our black and white papers to illustrate on, and I think overall, all of the pens actually worked really well on our black paper. Now there is one more secret to these pens, and that is going to require us to turn off the lights. Boop! It's just a black screen for now, but wait until we reveal the secret. Oh my gosh! I actually can't believe how well this is working. So if you can't tell what's happening, let me just bring this a little bit closer to the camera. So if you can't tell, I am using a little tiny black light. Thank you to Sakura for actually sending me these pens and this little black light. I'm actually really impressed with how well the black light works with these pens. It looks so cool. It just makes me want to make art where there is a secret that is revealed with the black light. I mean, think about the little details and fun messages you could do. Wow, I did not think I was going to be excited about creating neon art, yet here we are. Okay, swatching is over. Let's get to sketching. So going into each set of these pens, I wanted to create an illustration, like I said, that really incorporated the vibe of the colors and just the feel of these pens. So going into a grayscale of pens, I know that any illustration can be put into a grayscale. You can really create anything in grayscale. But like I said, I really wanted to embrace the grayscaleness of this pen set. So the first thing I thought about was rocks. Rocks are gray, which is kind of boring. Originally, I was kind of thinking of different shaped rocks to represent different, maybe creatures that had died. So instead of having a gravestone, there was a rock in the shape of them to resemble some sort of resting place. And then I was going to have a ghost that represented the shape of their previous bodies floating around their graves. But I think when it came down to it, I really just wanted to focus on creating a really fun and playful transparency when it came to these colors. When it comes to working with one color, I think it's just really fun to play around with the value. So going back to the original idea of creating this sort of gravestone-like situation, I still wanted to focus on the ghosts and having them go over these rocks and creating a transparent effect by just playing around with the different tones. You've probably noticed by now that I did add a white white classic jelly roll pen to this illustration. I thought it would be really, I guess, beneficial to these illustrations if I added a black pen to the white paper and a white pen to the black paper. White on black is just so satisfying, and white really goes along with the grayscale, so it just made a lot of sense with the ghosts especially to add in white. So it was very simple. I drew our rocks, and when it came to layering the ghosts over those rocks, I just put down maybe a tone or two backwards when it came to the darkness of the rock. Did that explanation make any sense? I have no idea. But either way, this is a very simple illustration. It's literally a stack of rocks with a cute face on it and ghosts flying around. But I think the effects turned out really cool. It was really fun to work with these pens. And I think this is a very simple illustration that has a very bold and effective, well, effect. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I found this set to be a little uninspiring and honestly a little hard to work with. The variety just wasn't there, and I don't know, wasn't feeling it. Either way, we're gonna zip right through this one and call it done. This illustration is the weakest of all of these, and to be honest, I'm just really excited about those neon colors, so let's get to those. Initially, after swatching these colors, I wasn't really thrilled about working with such neon, vivid, bright colors because honestly, it's just not my personal preference with color. However, once I used that black light on them, I just thought it was the coolest little gimmick with art, and I could not wait to make an illustration with it. The glow on its own was just enough inspiration for me to create this ghost-like mermaid sludge creepy creature, and I was just so excited to make this and then shine the black light on it and see what it looked like. So like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to include the color white. Is white a color? It's not, but I wanted to include the white pen on the black paper illustrations just because it did add a little bit something extra without, I think, interrupting these sets of colors. So going into this character, I really wasn't sure which color to make the skin when I remembered I was including white. So obviously I made white the character's body color, which I'll go ahead and mention because I haven't talked about this. The streakiness of the pens isn't, I don't think, an issue in general if you're just going to use the pens for shines. But if you're going to fill in really large spaces like I did, it was a little difficult. If you wanted to get a nice smooth flat of color, you did have to go back over the pen a second time, but by doing so you do reactivate the pen ink and you do kind of bring it up a little bit, and it gets really hard to get that nice flat. And it looks very streaky initially, but as you give it time to dry, even an additional 30 minutes, it does get a lot more flat looking. Okay, enough about that. Moving on to the coloring of this piece. Like I mentioned, I wasn't sure what parts of this character I wanted to be what color when I thought it would actually be really fun to create a gradient with these colors. They were the perfect colors. We had a pink, red, orange, yellow, and green, which gradient beautifully between each other. Though I will say I was quite nervous when it came to creating a gradient with pens. I don't think I've ever done that before. Gradients can be really difficult in the best of times, and using a very small point with ink that doesn't seem to be the most mixable or gradient friendly. I was very nervous, but I had a very easy time of it, I guess, just layering the ink, going back and forth between the colors between transition, and honestly, I don't think I could have asked for a smoother gradient between the colors. It turned out so well, it was easy, I had a lot of fun creating it, and the results are amazing. I mean, this gradient looks so cool. The neon colors are actually fun. I threw in some fish in the background just to create a little something extra, and I was super excited to see what this character looked like under the black light. So let's take a look at it. It's actually pretty creepy. our fourth and final set of jelly rolls, we have our metallic illustration, and like I mentioned when swatching these, I wasn't sure what to do because 3 or 4 of them were not working. A few of them were really spotty and transparent, but one of them just wasn't working, which kind of sucked because it was the bronze-ish looking one, which was a nice brown color. But we still had quite a few other colors to work with, so I figured we could still make something. So before using the metallic pens, I actually started off with a black pen, which, as I mentioned, wasn't included in these sets. In fact, this black pen isn't actually a jelly roll pen, it's actually called Glaze. It's by the same company. It obviously looks the same, it's in the same style, but it's called Glaze, which I think is talking about the sort of glazed, shiny look it has once the pen dries. You can tell the black ink is a lot shinier. In fact, I thought it wasn't dry for the longest time because it was still shiny, but it just has a nice shine to it. Now, I tried to do some gradients again, just like our previous illustration, but it wasn't working out so well. I don't know if it's because these metallic pens weren't as juicy as the neon ones, or maybe my technique was a little bit different because I wasn't doing strokes, because I feel like space wouldn't look as good if it was strokey. But either way, I tried to get a colorful gradient in the background for our space sky. It kind of worked. It just looks kind of silly. Overall, this whole illustration is kind of on the it didn't really work, but it looks silly, so I kind of like it mood. The black pen itself was a lot thicker than I would have liked, so making some details here and there wasn't really the best option. But I do think our ducks in space turned out super cute, especially the male mallard. I think the colors are really fun, and then even though the chicks wouldn't be green, I didn't have a different yellow color to make the chicks, and I didn't want to leave them white. So I just made the chicks these green little peas floating in space, and I think they just turned out really simple and adorable. And even though this illustration is super earthy and just kind of not the most exciting, I still think it's pretty cute. Of course, to finish this illustration, I had to add some stars, and it was done. There are our 4 sets of jelly pen illustrations. I especially had the most fun, of course, with our neon colors because the blacklight effect was so much fun. If you guys made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Stay golden. And really quick, a huge thank you to all of my patrons for their support. If you want early access to my videos, comic pages, coloring pages, secret sketches, and more, check out my Patreon link in the description. Thank you guys so much for the support. Bye!